Hello, and welcome to episode number 13 of the Rabe Creations podcast. My name's Nicole, and I'm coming to you as always from my home here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I live with my husband Barry, my son Riley, and my beautiful, wonderful, rescued Rottweiler named Grace. So, summer is just about wrapping up. We're getting close to fall, and I don't know about you, but I'm ready for fall. I am a heat lover, and this summer has not disappointed. We actually hit the hottest recorded temperature in our city's history this summer. We had a day of 42 degrees. Now I know for some of you in the southern states, that's gonna not seem that hot. For us, that was hot. That was really, really hot. I loved it, but it was a little too warm when you don't have air conditioning. It only lasted for a single day, and then we went back to more seasonable temperatures. So in the, high 20s, low 30s. So if that's our regular summer, 42, as you can imagine, was a huge jump. The other thing we've been dealing with a lot this summer is smoke. There are some huge forest fires currently burning in British Columbia, the next province over, and we have been completely covered in smoke for probably going on 3 weeks, maybe close to a month. I know there are bigger problems. The fact that in BC they are losing their homes, they're losing thousands and thousands of hectares of forest land to this fire. But the smoke has been horrendous. Even today, it looks like it's overcast out, and it's not. It's just smoky. If my voice sounds a little bit gritty, that is the cause. It's been a little tough for people who have respiratory issues, for the elderly, for young children. But, they are forecasting some rain, and that should help not only in dissipating some of the smoke, but in potentially putting out some of the fires. So, fingers crossed. Prayers are with all of you in BC who are dealing with the fires right now. All right, so on to some yarny stuff. This podcast, if you're new, deals primarily with crochet and yarny goodness. There's usually some sewing, and there is today. And every episode ends with a book recommendation as well. So if those things sound like things you might be interested in, please stick around. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. It's so good to spend some time with you. We are also in this podcast today going to be talking about the Halloween Mae Klong that I proposed last week. Or not last week, last podcast, as well as some ideas for some holiday things that we can do. Maybe a bit of an exchange, a bit of a cowl. That'll come up later, and I'll need some input and see what you guys are thinking about that. Alrighty, it's going to be a jam-packed episode, and sit back, grab your coffee, grab your tea. And this coffee cup is not showing backwards because of camera or anything. It actually says stay weird and is upside down because, yeah, stay weird. And we'll see you in a few minutes. All right, so let's get into some finished projects. I've got a few to show you. With it being as hot as it has been, it's been a little bit tougher to be doing a lot of crochet. Really warm, sweaty hands. Sweaty hands and wool don't always go together, but I persevered and I did get some done. A lot was due to the fact that I was working with some cotton yarn, and that is easier to work with in the heat than 100% wool. So, my first finished project is what I'm wearing today. So this is the Summer Breeze crochet top, and it is by Yarnspirations. There is a tutorial on YouTube done by the Crochet Crowd. I quite enjoyed making this top. I enjoy how it has turned out. I really love this cotton yarn. So it is a Caron cotton cake, which is a 60% cotton and a 40% acrylic blend. It was wonderful to work with. Great stitch definition. Yeah, great to work with. The yarn itself is very high twist, so it almost feels like working with singles. If you've ever worked with the singles, that's kind of what it feels like, except it's thicker because it is a size 4 weight. But I really did enjoy working with it. I am quite disappointed that it is discontinued. Hopefully it's just being seasonally discontinued and will be back. I right now sort of sneak into every Michael's store that I can find to see if they have any left in their clearance bins, because I enjoyed working with it that much. There is definitely going to be at least one more top, potentially a bag as well in my very near future. Fantastic to work with. So yes, that was the Rose Whisper colorway. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Now, getting into the pattern a little bit. The only part of the pattern that I found frustrating, the construction of the top is kind of neat because it's done in 2 panels that are worked lengthwise, so that you're getting your stripes going down instead of across. I kind of like that. It was a little bit different. Just one big panel for one side, one big panel for the other side. It seamed up the sides and up the front and up the back. Then you've got the waistband. I'm going to stand up to show this to you a little bit. So this waistband, I quite like how it has turned out. However, I really disliked the construction. They had you make the waistband as a separate piece and then attach it on with a whip stitch or a mattress stitch or whatever stitch you wanted to use to attach it on. Because it's ribbed, it was of course smaller than the garment itself that you were attaching it to, and it became really, really finicky. Now, because I do so many crochet socks, I'm forever adding cuffs to my socks, which are usually ribbed, and I have never once done a cuff and then whip stitched it onto anything. Usually the cuff is, if you do your cuff first, then you sort of do a round of, say, a single crochet that gives you something to attach onto, and then you work your sock onto your cuff that way. If you're working your sock so that you're doing the sock first and then the cuff, generally you would turn it sideways and work rows up and down in a rib that connect immediately to your project. I find that easy to do, easy to understand, not fiddly. The way they had me do this top, incredibly fiddly, and if I do the top again, I will modify how I do the waistband at the bottom, the cuffing at the bottom. It was just, I think for somebody to try that who potentially has never, is very much a beginner, which this pattern is well suited for, it will be very, very frustrating. The band will not potentially go on evenly, and it's going to be bunched in places and not bunched in other places, and just, I question the design. I think there would have been easier and better ways to do it. But it was a free pattern, so, you know, it is what it is. And it was a learning experience. Now I know I would never design anything that way. Alrighty, so moving on to some other finished projects that I have done. Totally unseasonable, I know, but, you know, you do what you do. So I have done a hat and cowl set for myself. This is not going into my Etsy shop. This is not going to be gifted. This is for me. So there is the hat, and it is the bulky hat pattern by, grab my show notes, by Elk Studio. Now it is a free pattern on Ravelry. Quite interesting in its workup. Those are not bobble stitches or popcorns. They're actually twisted front post double crochets, which I thought was kind of neat, or front post trebles, which I thought was kind of neat. The yarn that I used is actually 100% non-superwash wool. It is very rustic in its feel. It came from the Fiber Arc. I actually showed this a couple of podcasts back as a hank. Yeah, really nice to work with. I have not washed or blocked this yet. I don't seriously block my hats, but washing will soften it up a little bit. It is rustic. It is hand spun. It is locally grown and dyed and spun and all that good stuff. So it's kind of fun that way. Yeah, I quite enjoy this hat. It is not slouchy. I am not much of a slouchy hat wearer myself, but yeah, it's going to be super, super warm for this winter. So to go with my new hat, I also did a scarf. Well, I guess it's a cowl because it is joined. How interesting is that construction? So again, the blue is the same yarn that I use, the same wool that I used for the hat. It is the sky blue color, and it is from Fiber Arc, and it is 100% Canadian merino wool. Very nice. The white, or cream color, is also from Fiber Arc. It is the same wool, but undyed. Nice, eh? I really like this construction of this cowl. So the pattern itself was fairly easy to follow, and it is called the Moon Ridge Cowl by Jane Howarth. And it is in the Interweave Crochet magazine Fall 2017 edition. So yeah, the pattern called for you to work with 2 strands of worsted weight yarn held together, but I used this bulky yarn and it worked out quite well. The pattern is, once you've got it, you've got it. It's, you know, easy to memorize, and you can keep going with it. And then for the ending of it, this interesting join, I love this. So it's working in this direction, and then you've got chains that you work back and forth to create some loops. Then you go back to the other end, the end that you started with, and you work the same chains in the same spots of the scarf or the cowl, but you loop it through the previous loops to create this really interesting join for the cowl. So yes, this is my first hat and cowl project that I've made for myself for the upcoming winter season, and it is going to be incredibly warm. As I said with the hat, I have not washed this yet. The yarn will soften up a little bit with washing. It is rather toothy, but not so bad that I can't have it next to my skin, and I just love it. I love the fact that it's local in all respects. It's not just locally dyed, it's locally grown, it's locally raised, it's local. It's local. So I will put the links to all of these things in the show notes right down there if you'd like to take a look. Yeah, so that yarn is from the Fiber Arc here in Alberta. Alrighty, so moving on, that is it for my crocheted finished projects, or for the time period. As I said, it was a little more difficult to crochet because of the heat, but I do have some sewing projects to show with you. So first off, last podcast I showed a Mickey Mouse project bag that I had done, and I have completed the crochet hook roll that matches it. So I will untie it here and unroll it. So it is in exactly the same fabrics as the project bag. So it matches completely. It has this nice little flap that helps to hold your crochet hooks in when it's rolled up. And lots of spots, and a little bit of a bigger spot where you could put in a pair of small scissors. And then it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 spaces for hooks. So as I said, that does match completely with the Mickey Mouse bag that I showed last episode. And yeah, I think they're really cute. I just love this fabric. I'm into vintage, and this just makes my heart happy. So I've also completed 2 new project bags. Now the crochet hook roll and the project bags will be going up in my Etsy shop. I am doing another shop update on September the 3rd, I believe it is, the first Monday in September. So yeah, come on over and check out all the fun stuff that's going on at the Etsy shop as well. So this is the first of the bags. It is my regular medium-sized bag. It is a drawstring, as always. Fun Halloween prints. Yay, Halloween! So we have this fun print up top with pumpkins and cats and bats and owls and spooky houses and all that fun stuff. The green fabric at the bottom that I think matches quite nicely. The strap and the casings are done in a nice purple, and then the inside is this gold spotted fabric on the inside. As always, it does have a box bottom and makes a handy dandy sturdy little yarn bowl for you as well. So yeah, that is the first of the 2 project bags I have to show you today. The second one is again a Halloween theme, but it is one of my jumbo bags. There has been quite a bit of interest in my jumbo bags, so I will continue to make them as long as people continue to be interested in them. So this is it. I'll put it right in front of me. So it has different Halloween prints. The bottom has some candelabras in the black and white print with some books and skulls and candles and all that spooky good stuff. The upper part of the bag is, I forgot what the fabric was called, Queen of Ween, so Queen of Halloween. So it's got some references to the Queen of Hearts, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. It's also got some crows, some skulls. I really like this pattern. Again, it feels a little vintagey to me. Now the strap and the casing are red polka dots, and the inside of the bag is this black and white printed fabric. So I think it all goes quite well together. These bags do have the box bottom as well. They are interfaced, so they're lined, not with as heavy an interfacing as the smaller bags. It is a bit of a lighter interfacing, so the bag doesn't quite stand up as a yarn bowl the way the smaller bags do, but these bags hold so much. When I took pictures of the last ones to post up on Etsy, I was able to fit like 7 balls of Impact or Simply Soft yarn, and still it only filled half the bag. So these are truly project bags meant for sweaters and blankets and that sort of thing. They are enormous. So that brings me to the end of my finished projects for this episode. Yeah, so let's move along to some projects that are on the go. All right, so moving on to my current projects, I have 2 that I'm going to share with you today. So, let me think here. One you've seen before, and one is a new cast on. No, see, casting on is knitting. What do we call it in crochet? A new chain on? maybe that will catch on. We'll see. But one is a newly started project, and one is one you've seen before. So we'll start with the one you've seen before, and that is the shawl that I'm making for my son's wedding. It is living here in my psychedelic mushrooms bag. And if you recall, it is being crafted with the Sheepia's Whirl in the Watermelon Hellraiser colorway. And as you can see from the Whirl, I have gotten through the majority of the gray color. So I am moving into the peaches. And this is the shawl as it stands. Now, the pattern, before I show you, the pattern that I've been using is called, oh, and I'm going to say this wrong again, the Coquina Shawl by Sherry White. And I was following it exactly to pattern, but I was getting a little worried. It was not growing in length, but it was getting really, really ruffly. So I have modified as I'm going along to try and have it be a little less ruffly. Now, I do understand that this is going to be blocked and blocked heavily, and that will also help to stretch it out and whatnot, but I did have to modify the pattern a bit. I don't know if it's the yarn, the Sheepia's yarn is different than what the pattern called for, and perhaps that's making a difference. But yeah, I wasn't terribly impressed with the fabric as it was working up, so I have made some minor adjustments to the number of stitches per row to try and get it to be less ruffly and have more length. I do not want to frog this back. It is too much work to frog back, so I'm just going to keep modifying as I go to make it work. So here it is. Are you ready? Alright, so there it is. So as you can see, it is going to end up being a fairly shallow shawl, and that's okay, because the wedding is at the end of September, when it will still be fairly warm. Don't necessarily need something really warm to wrap up in, just want something to cover up my shoulders if need be. So it is almost as wide as my wingspan now, but as you can see, it's not real deep and it's quite ruffly. So yeah, as I said, I'm modifying it a bit to create less ruffle and more length. Now you can see that the orange and peachy color is starting to be worked in. It started out in the darkest of dark and has moved down into the peachy colors. The pattern itself is very easy to do. Now, I haven't gotten to the edge yet with the scalloping, and I'll let you know how that lace scalloping goes when I get to it. But so far, this repeat pattern, super simple, and super simple to modify as well. Now, the Sheepia's yarn. I did have quite a few people, when I first showed the Sheepia's, interested in how it worked up, and I gave you my initial feelings last podcast, and I have some more feelings about it now. So last podcast, I did find it a little bit splitty, and I still do at times. As the project has gotten bigger, and I've gotten used to working with it, it is less splitty than I had first suspected it was going to be. So as I worked with it, the splittiness issue did go away, and it became easier and easier to work with. I have worked with a number of gradient yarns, as y'all know if you've been watching the podcast, mostly Karen cakes and that sort of abrupt change gradient yarn. This yarn has a longer color change to its gradients, and it is done in such an amazing way. I understand now why this yarn is potentially as expensive as it is. So the yarn itself is made up of 6 strands. Believe it or not, being a fingering weight yarn, it is made up of 6 strands. The color change is done 1 strand at a time. So when I started out, it was 6 strands of the darkest gray, nearly black. Then, slowly, strands were replaced. So first it went to 1 strand of the light gray with 4 strands, or with 5 strands of the darkest. And then it went to 2 strands of gray with 4 strands of the darkest. And it slowly switches out the number of lighter colored strands within the single piece of yarn. And it continues that way until it's solid gray, and then slowly the gray starts to be replaced with the peach. This is amazing. Such a interesting way to do those gradient color changes. I love this. And as I said, once you understand the construction of the yarn, I do understand how the process would be much more difficult, and therefore it makes sense that they are as expensive as they are. I'm loving this yarn. The colors are beautiful. As I've worked with it, I've gotten used to the construction, so it is not as splitty as it was originally. It is a cotton blend. Again, in this heat, it has been a lifesaver. Love it, love it, love it. The shawl pattern itself, as I said, is leaving me a little worried that it's not going to be quite deep enough, but with the modifications I'm making to the pattern, hopefully that will be rectified and it will still work out just fine. I recognize that I'm going to be blocking this shawl and blocking it hard, so I'll be able to give you an update on how the Whirl yarns block after that. So that is one of the projects I've been working on. And the other project is the one that I just started and haven't shown to you yet. So there's a bit of backstory behind this project. And I'm sorry if you can hear some outside noise. I cannot have the windows closed today. It is too warm. So I had bought some yarn probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago that I was using to make a blanket. And I got about 3/4 of the way through the blanket. And for some reason, I stopped working on it. It went into hibernation mode and stayed there. Now last week, I was working on cleaning up my craft room a little bit, cleaning up the studio, and I came across this project. And I hummed and hawed and hummed and hawed and finally decided to do it. I frogged it. I frogged the whole thing. It was 3/4 of a twin size blanket, and I frogged it. Obviously, it wasn't appealing to me anymore, so you know what? If it's not working, let's just get rid of it, use the yarn for something else. Now, the yarn that I had bought for it, I really do love. Again, it is a cotton blend. It is no longer available, so this is yarn that I had gotten at Michael's. It is a Loops and Threads yarn. They do a lot of interesting yarns. And it is another cotton blend. So this one is 87% acrylic and only 13% cotton, but it is a cotton blend. And it does have the barber pole type striping to it, so yeah, very interesting. I quite like it. So it's a dark green color. In fact, the color is called green. Lots of imagination went into the naming of the colors of this yarn. So it is a dark green, and then the barber pole striping is done with white. And I really like that. It gives it a very much a variegated look. Yeah, quite pretty. I liked it when I bought it, and that's why I bought it to do the blanket, and the blanket just didn't appeal to me. So I frogged it all out. I rewound everything back up. As you can see, I still had full balls of yarn that I hadn't even used yet. And I started a new project. So this is the Everyday Cardigan. Grab my show notes again. It is the Everyday Cardigan by Sorella. And it is a free pattern that I found on Ravelry. So again, all the links will be below if you'd like to check it out. It is a super easy, beginner-friendly pattern that is a nice, basic, first-time garment if somebody is interested in doing something like that. If you've never done a garment before and you're a little intimidated, because let's face it, it can be intimidating to do these sweaters, this would be a fantastic place to start. Super easy, basic knowledge of stitches, basic construction. Love it. So this is what I have done so far. My goodness, I did not put a stitch thingy in there. All right, so the way the sweater is constructed in a solid piece for the back, and then you do one of the front panels that connects immediately. You don't even break your yarn. You just do this front side panel. Then you do the other front panel. Then you seam up the sides and do the arms. There is also a band and a collar that is done as well. So this is how the yarn works up, and I love it. So this is going to be a super cozy fall wear. I really, really, really like this. And as I said, if you are a first-time garment maker, or if you've tried garments before and haven't really been happy, potentially got intimidated by the garment making process, this is a fantastic, fantastic place to start. Again, I'll link it below. Can't say enough about this so far. I'll let you know what the sleeves are like, because sleeves can be a little intimidating, but I'll let you know what the sleeves are like when I get there. This is working up incredibly fast. This is about 2 nights worth of work, so it's working up incredibly fast. And I will keep you up to date with that as it progresses. So that's it for my current projects. The shawl and the new cardigan. I have been working on some sewing, but I'm angry with my sewing. What makes me struggle with sewing sometimes are patterns, and pattern sizing. I'm not sure where the pattern makers get their sizing from, but it doesn't seem to correspond to clothing sizing anywhere else but on their patterns. And even if you go from one company to another, their pattern sizing is completely different. So right now I am doing a skirt, a Halloween skirt, that I am having to modify quite a bit because it just wasn't going to fit. Although, on the positive note, it has inspired me to once again go back to my healthy eating regime. So I am, yes, decided that I need to get things back under control again, and I am eating much healthier, and hopefully the modifications I make to the skirt will make it work. I have also found the fabric that I'm going to make my dress for my son's wedding out of, so that is also a project that I need to get done. The wedding is on September the 22nd, so yes, I have now set deadlines for the shawl, the dress, and the blanket that I'm making. Don't forget about that. So pressure's on. Sometimes we need a little bit of an end date to make the projects happen. All right, so that's about it. I am going to step away, and when I come back, we can talk about the cowls and the projects that I have upcoming for you all. So, before we get into the cowl updates for this episode, let's talk about some new additions I have to share with you today. Now, I do have the Prairie Fiber Festival that is coming up in Lacombe on September the 8th that I will be attending, and I will be buying things. Hopefully a drop spindle and some fiber and some yarn, and I'll be sharing all of that with you in a future podcast. And I have been trying really hard to not spend a whole lot, not buy a whole lot right now in anticipation of that festival. However, some of my new additions I actually won. So I didn't buy them, I won them, and that's okay. The other new addition I did buy, but I couldn't not buy it. It was the last one. It was an Etsy order. It was the last one, and you'll see why I had to have it in a moment. So first, let's get into the stuff that I won. So I have been watching a podcaster out of the UK. Her name is Heather, and her podcast is HGdesigns Crochet. She is pretty amazing. She is coming up with some really interesting designs. She does crochet and knit. She has a very boho vibe to her crochet, and I love it. I absolutely adore her podcasts. If you haven't ever watched her, I suggest you go check her out. She is fantastic. So I entered a giveaway on her YouTube channel, and I won. I always get excited when I win things. So let me show you what she sent. So first off, I have a little mini skein in this beautiful, beautiful turquoise color. And it is a skein of yarn from Riverknits in the UK. I am not 100% sure what the content is. It feels and seems to me to be a sock yarn with a, say, wool nylon blend, but I am going to treat it as non-superwash just because I'm not 100% sure. So I have a skein of absolutely gorgeous aqua or teal colored yarn. She also sent a cute little stitch marker. So this stitch marker is from a UK company called Esme's Buttons. I will insert some pictures at the end of the podcast to show better detail of some of the stuff. But yeah, the stitch marker itself is iridescent, and it reminds me of a mermaid. So that came with the yarn. And then it also came, excuse me, there's going to be a little bit of crinkling, I do apologize. I want to take it out of the plastic so that I can cut down on glare. So it also came with a button that says, "Choose Adventure." And the button is from a Spoonful of Sugar and Company, again in the UK. So that was a fun package to have come in the mail. I love yarn mail. It is the best kind of mail. Yeah, so that was a fantastic little prize package. And then comes my purchase that I wasn't supposed to do but did anyway. So once again, I have returned to Polka Dot Creek, which is one of my favorite indie yarn dyers. She is based out of Airdrie, which is sort of the next town to Calgary. And I have bought many things from her and shared many things that I have purchased from her with you all on this podcast. So I found in her shop the last available sock set. That is her Halloween colorway. It's called Trick or Treat. So the main colorway is a beige base, and it has gorgeous speckles. So the speckling, there's black, there's green, there's orange, there's purple. All of the colors that you would associate with Halloween are in this, are speckled in this beautiful, beautiful yarn. It came with two minis, it's just called Purple and Sour Green. And again, work perfectly well with the speckling in the yarn. And it is one of her classic sock sets. So this will become a pair of Halloween socks. How exciting is that? And it did come with a little stitch marker as well. So there it is. It is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. There are 463 yards to 100 grams in the large skein, and then the mini skeins are 93 yards, 20 grams a piece. So absolutely gorgeous. These are going to make a fantastic pair of Halloween socks. So as I said, I did not add a lot into my stash today. Just a few things. So I feel like I've done pretty well. But that is the end of my new additions. And now we can move into the Cowl update. Last podcast, I put the idea out there that maybe we would do a Halloween make-along, and there has been some good response. So I think I would like to go ahead with that and run my first ever cowl. Yay! So it will be a Halloween themed cowl, and more of a make-along than a cowl. So it is open to crochet, to knitting, to sewing, to cross-stitching. Pretty well, if you can craft it with fiber, you can enter in the make-along. So it will run from September 1st through October 31st. So from the 1st of September all the way through the end of October. So lots of time to get some entries. It is, the only stipulation is that it must be a new start. So no works in progress, please. It needs to be a new start. And it needs to be a Halloween theme. Now that could be Halloween colored yarns, it could be Halloween decor, it could be costuming type stuff. If you can tie it into Halloween, you can enter it. So I will open, actually I already have opened a thread in Ravelry with our group on Ravelry, Rabe Creations. That is the chatter thread, where we can, you know, talk about the projects we're going to make, maybe share some patterns, that sort of thing. In the near future, so once the make-along starts, I will open a secondary thread in Ravelry for the posting of finished project pictures. Please no chatter in that thread. The idea is I am going to be drawing 2 prizes, one from the chatter thread and one from the finish objects thread. For the finish objects, please 1 post per finished object. And as I said, no chatter. It'll make it much easier for me to do a random number generator if I don't have to filter out any chatter. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. Let me know what you think. Come on over to Ravelry and join in the discussion, and let's make some plans and let's celebrate Halloween together. But beyond Halloween, I was also thinking about holiday and what we can do as a group for holiday this year. And I was thinking about a holiday sock-along. I personally love to crochet socks. I don't know how y'all feel about socks. But I know there's a lot of sock knitters out there as well, and that's cool. You can definitely knit or crochet socks for the sock-along. There are a number of other podcasters who also tend to run holiday sock-alongs, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to potentially double or triple dip into other podcasters' make-alongs as well. I will share some of those other make-alongs as the time grows closer to that make-along. But yeah, I would really like to do a holiday sock-along. Last year, and this year as well, Amy from Stranded Dye Works, I watch her podcast, and she got me started last year on my box of holiday socks. Now she is taking it to the extreme, and she is trying to do a box with 25 pairs of holiday socks, 1 for each day. That's a bit extreme for me right now, but I wouldn't mind having 12 pairs of holiday socks for the 12 days of Christmas. Last year I was able to complete 2, so I am looking at potentially doing 10 pairs of holiday socks. I know that's not going to happen this year, but you know, over the next couple of years I would like to have my 12 pairs of holiday socks, and this could help add to my box of socks. So if you would be interested in doing a holiday sock-along, please let me know. And for any other podcasters out there who are watching this, if you wanted to potentially, you know, partner up for this sock-along, I would be open to that. Shoot me a message in Ravelry and we'll see what we can do. The other thing centered around holiday that I would be interested in doing, and wondering if there's any interest out there, would be a bit of a swap. Some of the podcasters I watch do swaps all the time, and there was the carousel packages going around, which was kind of fun. So I was thinking of initiating a holiday swap. Not necessarily doing advent calendars because those are so large and can be quite expensive to do, but I was thinking more of like a 12 days of Christmas. So what it would be is you would put together a parcel with 12 little things in it, little Christmas things in it for the recipient of your parcel, and in return you would get a package of 12 things for your 12 days of Christmas. We would need to be sort of get a wiggle on, so to speak, with getting this arranged so that the parcels would need to be mailed by December 1 so that they could arrive in time for people to have fun with them. If you are interested in doing this and would like to work out some details, please, again, shoot me a message in Ravelry. That's usually the best way, or even below here on the podcast in YouTube, and we'll see if we can get enough interest to do it. It would potentially be a exchange where people would sort of let me know if they were interested and how far they would be willing to ship. So are you willing to ship internationally, or do you just want to ship within your own country? And if I can partner you up with someone else in the podcast, we can do it that way. Or if it doesn't have that much interest and there's only a couple of us wanting to do it, I would be willing to swap parcels with a few people. And do it that way so that you'd all receive a parcel from me and I would receive your parcels. So let me know if that's something that you would enjoy doing, and I will get that arranged as well. So as you can tell, I am a big holiday fan. I love Halloween, I love Christmas, I love celebrating all those holidays. So yeah, those are my ideas for upcoming cowls and things that we can do centered around the podcast. So let me know if you're interested. Come on over to Ravelry though, because we've definitely got the Halloween one up and running, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone contributes to that. Oh, I should mention that, well, I think I already did, that there will be a prize coming out of the chatter thread and a prize coming out of the finished projects thread on Ravelry for the Halloween Mae Klong. All right, that is all the yarny goodness I have for you today. So if you are not interested in book recommendations, I will bid you a fair adieu. But if you would like to hear this podcast's book recommendation, please stick around and we will take a trip to my bookshelf. So going to my bookshelf, this podcast, I have come up with a book to share with you. Canadian author and a new publication. So the book was published in 2018, so it is a newer book. The author's name is Kevin Chong, and he is a Canadian living in Vancouver, who is also, he teaches at the University of British Columbia's Creative Writing Program and the Writer's Studio at Simon Fraser University. So he is definitely a literature kind of person. So the book that I'm sharing with you today is called The Plague. And although your immediate reaction may be that it is sort of the dystopian type fantasy type book, it really isn't. Well, it is, but it isn't. So the book is based in current times, and the plague, the bubonic plague, breaks out again. This time in Vancouver, Vancouver, Canada. The city is quickly quarantined. No one can leave, no one can enter. And this is the story of 3 people living in Vancouver through the quarantine. It is not your typical apocalyptic, dystopian drama with, you know, thriller and action and zombies and whatever else crawls out of the woodwork. It is very much a character study. It is not a fast-paced read like some of the more action-adventure apocalyptic books are. It is a rather slow burn, so it won't be everyone's cup of tea. It really explores how these three strangers who were stranded in the city, how their lives start to intertwine throughout the quarantine of the city. It is very, very well written. Obviously, Kevin Chong is a instructor of creative writing, so it definitely has his strengths there. The pacing is not quick. So if you're looking for a fast-paced read that sort of pulls you in and doesn't let you go, this probably isn't the book that would appeal to you. It is a bit of a slow burn, and it's more the story of the three people and how they interact with other people during the crisis than it is about the crisis itself. So it's not gory, it's not scary, it's not one of those books. But it was very well done, so it is definitely worth a read. It is a little bit different in its presentation, so it is told by a narrator that you don't know who it is until the very end of the book, although you can guess. But very interesting. It was interesting to see three different people from very different backgrounds, and how the quarantine affected them, how the death around them, because obviously the plague is the plague, how it affected them and how it changes people. So it was more about the people than it was about the crisis. So yeah, definitely worth taking a peek at. I don't know how easy it is going to be to get outside of Canada, but I'm sure it is something that you can get. So yeah, that is The Plague, and the author is Kevin Chong, and it is well worth a read. So, that is it for episode 13 of the Rabe Creations podcast. If you have stuck around to the end, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. If this was your first time viewing the podcast, thank you for sticking around. If you liked what you saw, hit the subscribe button. Give it a thumbs up so that more people get to share in our little yarny community. If you haven't yet checked out the thread for the Halloween make-along, please feel free to go on over and do that. If you're looking for me in other places in social media, because I'm all over the place, I do have a very active Instagram account. I am Nicole_Rabe Creations on Instagram. I've mentioned that I do have an Etsy store, so that's Rabe Creations on Etsy. Of course, the YouTube channel. I'm on Ravelry, as we've talked about a few times. So I would love to hook up with y'all in other social media platforms as well. So feel free to look me up, say hello, give me a poke, whatever it takes. Alrighty, that's about it for today. Have a wonderful couple of weeks. We will see you again right after the Halloween make-along begins, and it will be after, I believe, after my fiber show, so I'll have lots of things to share with you. All right, until then, we'll see you later. Bye now.